welcome to another episode of the Laughter for All podcast. I am Comedian Nazareth, and thank you so much for joining us every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. Where we have an hour live with our guest, where I guarantee you'll be encouraged, you'll be blessed, and later on in the week, it goes on all the iTunes, Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it, it will be there. So thank you so much. You guys know that we're called Laughter for All. That doesn't mean we only interview comedians and we're not only funny, but we want to be real and we want to be able to lift you up and encourage you, especially in these times that's going through. And this time, I have a friend who's really, if you're in business, if you're a leader, if you're a Christian, if you're just a person that needs to improve your life and this man has so much experience that I can't read it all, but I'm going to just go over just touches of this mosaic of a man. Greg's mission in life is to strengthen the great leaders, ideas, and organizations of our time so the kingdom causes of Christ can be exponentially accelerated. I love the way his choice of words. He consulted nationally and internationally for large corporate structures, small business, and faith based nonprofit enterprises. I know some of your crisis pregnancy people, leaders are watching, and there's some pastors are watching. So this is for you as well. When we say CEOs and leaders, we also mean pastors. I've also helped several people with their life plan. He loves connecting people to just the right person, resource, ministry, idea, or business. I know some of you pastors are going, yes, him. Let me know if you can do the same for you. If we can do the same for you. He have connection around the world. He's been, he has stories when he's in France, he's in India, he is in Nepal, all over the world. And if you need some life coaching or business coaching, just, this is a man to talk to. So please welcome my good friend, Greg Leith. How are you, Greg?
Well, Naz, it's great to be with you, and I have great respect for you and the work that God has called you to do. So I'm looking forward to our time together.
So you were born in Canada, right?
It's true.
Where in Canada?
In Ottawa. For those of your listeners in Canada, they all know where Ottawa is because it's the capital. But for those of you in the USA are saying, where's Ottawa? It's just sort of kind of above New York and Buffalo.
Why is it Canadians are nice people? Why is it? Everybody knows that.
It happened somewhere at birth. I don't know. It's just how it goes. We say, I'm sorry, even when it's our fault, or the other guy's fault.
Was your dad a business leader? Was he a company CEO?
My dad was a business person. He was in real estate, and he actually worked for the government for a while until we moved to Florida. So the truth is, I'm a little bit schizophrenic because I grew up in Canada and Florida. I was this nice little Canadian boy, 9 years old. We moved to Florida. I can tell you that my first day on the playground was a scary experience because I went into geography class and I didn't know the 50 states. The lady who was the teacher got me in trouble for not knowing the 50 states. I went to English class and I spelled things with a U or a QUE, the British way. I got in trouble for that. I went through the food line. The lady says, "You want pronto pups?" I said, "What's a pronto pup?" I got in trouble for that. She says, "You want tater tots?" I said, "I don't know what tater tots are." And I went out to the playground and they said, "You want to play tetherball?" And I didn't know what tetherball was. So it was a bad day.
Well, that's wonderful. Now, were you the oldest sibling? Did you have other brothers and
It
sisters?
was only me, which explains everything that's wrong with me. I was an only child who got his way all the time.
So, is that what you wanted to do when you were younger? Like, I want to be a leader, a CEO, a coach. I want to be like dad, maybe.
I always wanted to be in business. There was a time after I graduated from Biola University in Southern California that I thought that I wanted to be in the nonprofit business. I felt like God would smile on me somehow a little more if I was doing something missions in some foreign country. And I came to realize that God could use me in business as much as he could use somebody in nonprofit.
So you never had this feeling like God wants me to be a pastor and just start a church and
Never wanted to
shepherd.
be a pastor, never wanted to be anything in a church. I just wanted to be a nonprofit missions leader for a while. And then, to make a very long story short, I'm interviewing with a missions leader. And they basically said, Greg, we'll hire you, but most of the people we hire from Christian colleges with Bible degrees don't really know how to run a company. So why don't you go get some experience and come back and see us in a couple years? And 20 years later, I was still working for Service Master. We grew from 300 million to 9 billion, and we served about 1,700 hospitals, had about 1,500 franchises, had all the leading home brands, Terminex, the largest pest control company in the world,
Yeah.
True Green Chemlawn, the largest lawn care company in the world, Service Master, Mary Maids, the largest maid service in the world, and we were doing $9 billion when I left.
And before I get to that, I mean, when did you were your parents believers in Christ, or when did you have an experience where you felt, okay, I need to commit my life to Christ?
Yeah, so I was 7 years old living in Canada. There was a little program at the church called Stockaders. Your Canadian listeners will know what that is, but it's kind of a Christian Boy Scouts thing. And I was 7 years old. My mom was not a Christian, and my dad was. Actually, my mom was very sort of Episcopalian Presbyterian, and my
Mhm.
dad was very Pentecostal. So I was schizophrenic. And And I
That's
went
funny.
to this church one night when a man said, if you want to accept Jesus, come see me. And it was one of those kind of stages with a big velvet curtain. And I felt like I was going to see the Wizard of Oz or something like that. And I went behind the curtain and I accepted Jesus. And I was scared to knock on the door of my own house because my mom might answer and get me in trouble for accepting Jesus.
Oh.
So I accepted Christ, and later on, about 5 years later, my mom would contract cancer, accept Jesus, and pass away on my 15th birthday.
Oh, I'm sorry. And when did you start getting interested in writing? Where you felt, I can write well because you do. You write great blogs.
Oh, thank you. That probably came from my journalist father and my English teacher mother.
Oh.
I, I couldn't get away with anything that was poor grammar or poor writing. I would have to write it over and over and over again. And if any of my 5 kids are listening, I apologize. We did the same thing with them.
Your daughter is amazing. Actually, I hired her once for a PR something, so she does. Now, let's see. You decided. So you went to Biola, which my son graduated from Biola Film School, and I remembered when we first met, you were at Biola, and you moved to Convene. But what was your first missionary trip? Where did you go?
Oh my gosh. I think if you define missions as out of the United States,
Out of the
I
United
did
States,
what
yes.
everybody else in California does. I think we went and built a house in Mexico. It was pretty much my last build a house missions trip because you have to put nails in wood and I don't know how to do that properly. So all my nails go to the wrong place and they don't hold the piece of wood. I said, I'm not your guy anymore. Maybe my favorite, somewhat sad missions trip was I woke up one morning way too early. I'm down in my dining room, somehow following stories about Orissa, India. And
Mm.
in Orissa, India, 116 pastors had been martyred because they were pastors. And the Lord clearly said about 3, 4 in the morning, I want you to go to Orissa and work with those pastors. And I said, I'm the wrong guy. I don't know anything about India. I don't know anything about helping pastors. So I talked to a few people and brought my son Carson along. And about 2 months later, we were in Orissa helping these pastors' wives who were widows. We built a spice business and a brick making business and a rice processing business. And these women that were martyred, I have, great respect for. And that was probably my most significant missions trip.
And that's amazing. So those widows were able to find jobs because you brought what God gifted you with, the ability to start businesses and to
Mhm.
do that. That's amazing. Now, what I remember one time you were in India and you were throwing up and you were in a train and all that. Is that is that a fun story or no?
That's a fun story off the air, but basically, I had just eaten something as we all do when we're doing these foreign trips, and was pretty sick. And the Saddleback pastor who I was with, Mike Constance, the last thing I remember, since he's a pharmacist, he went and got some pills and he said, "Here, take this," and that was the last thing I remember for 24 hours. But we were able to plant some churches in Nepal that are still functioning today.
Wow. So what do you think that got you to that position? I know gifting, the Lord's guiding, but what it got you to where you're able to actually coach leaders and become, you know, I mean, you at one part of your career is coaching, correct?
Uh-huh.
How do you know when you're ready to coach, or how do you feel, what steps did got you to that level to where you're able to coach big leaders?
Well, I don't do a lot of coaching anymore. I mostly am a CEO to CEOs at Convene, where we've got thousands of CEOs that interact with our learning resources. But I think it's really a combination of, as my friend Bob Shank says, what is your natural talent? And part of my natural talent is to think strategically and to think individually. So I see the big picture and I see the individual. Secondly, what's your spiritual gifting? And so part of my spiritual gifting is discernment. And so you put that together and then you say, what's your passion? I love helping people figure out their life. And I especially love helping young leaders. And at Convene, we love helping CEOs because we feel like if we help the CEO, we help the whole company. If we can make a difference in the leader, we can make a difference in the people he loves or she loves.
So how do you make a difference in a leader? Let's say someone is a CEO and he said, okay, why do I need to go to Convene and what are they going to do? How are they going to help me?
Yeah, well, part of it is, we're all trying to go it alone as leaders instead of picking up the phone. Um, you are lucky as a member of the association, if that still exists, of Christian comedians. So if that's still
Mhm.
something that's a thing, you get to go and be with other people who do what you do. Most Christian CEOs are not in groups of like-minded people. There's secular organizations that teach you how to make more money, secular organizations that teach you how to be better. But Convene teaches you not only how to run business with excellence and to love people and to make money, but to do it all on a biblical platform and make a difference to change communities, change cultures, change companies. And the way we do that is we do it through peer groups of people that meet for a day together to work on their business, and they get coaching and they are involved with each other through our online resources. So it's a great combination of what we call how people grow, right? How do people grow? It's not just by reading your Bible, though that's really, really, really important. It's not just by reading a leadership book, that's important. It's not just by being in a small group, that's important. It's not just by having a coach, that's important. It's all of that together. We should be reading books, we should be reading our Bible, we should be in tune with the Holy Spirit, we should be having a coach, we should be assessing ourselves, and according to Romans 12:3, taking accurate inventory of who we are. And all that together is how leaders grow. We don't want to be the leader who's, like on American Idol, if we can steal from some of their funny lines when somebody sings and they're horrible. And Simon says, "Didn't your mother ever tell you you can't sing?" And we don't want to be the leader who says, "Oh, yeah, everybody says I'm a nice guy." But everybody doesn't say you're a nice guy because maybe you are rude and maybe you are whatever you are, but you're not realizing it. That's being assessed. And so Convene helps people with coaching, gets them in peer groups, teaches them how to dive into their Bible more, et cetera, et cetera. That's how leaders grow.
Now, when do you think someone needs a coach? At what level of their business, their organization, their church? Uh,
Well, I think everybody really should have a coach. And it's not a matter of when, it's a matter of you need to do it. 70% of people who have a coach say their productivity improves. 57% say their time management improves. 68% said they got a return on investment from their coaching. And 67% of people said they improved their life balance. So we partner with Chris McCluskey and Professional Christian Coaching Institute, and all of our coaches and leaders are involved in training that's professional. Because here's the problem, Naz. Anybody in America today, anybody in the world can say, I'm a coach,
right.
and there's no designation. If you want to hire a professional coach, you need to see if they're certified, and that would be a much better investment.
So, other than certified, how do you know there's a good coach? Like, who do you look for? Let's say I'm a comedian. I'm looking for a coach. Who do I look for? I mean, I want a Christian coach, of course, but who do I look for that can help me strategically plan? Because I am all over ADD.
Yeah, I think I would go to the PCCI, Professional Christian Coaches Institute website, and I would look for somebody who sort of looks like they are a fit with you. And you'd want to probably call and interview some people and make sure that there's chemistry. And you'd want to make sure that they're certified. So all those things together.
Now, what do you say to someone? Let's say, there's Christians that have this, like they feel guilty because they have big goals and big dreams and all that. How do you help someone like that? What do you say to that?
Well, I'm a fan of big dreams. I love asking the question, what do you think God wants you to do to make the most significant difference for Him in your lifetime? And there's nothing wrong with big dreams. The problem with big dreams is if you don't have a plan to execute the dream, then the dream is only a dream. It will always be a dream, and it will never become reality.
Through this pandemic, a lot of people came to the conclusion that, I hate my job. I don't like what I'm doing. I think I want to start my own business. What advice do you give to people like that?
Well, I think back to some of the things we talked about a little bit earlier, you need to assess your skills and talents and abilities. If you have an ability to start a business, if you have the money to start a business, if your friends are telling you you should be in business, then go for it. But if you're the kind of person who says, I hate budgeting and I don't really like having to get people to do things that work for me. I'm nervous when I, have a bank loan that I can't meet payroll. Then you're probably not a person to want to be an entrepreneur. You're probably a person who maybe should stay where you are. But if you say, my personality assessment is that I'm able to envision things, I'm able to execute things, I'm uh, able to see a future, see around the corner that people mostly can't see. I'm able to organize. I'm able to challenge people. I'm able to incentivize people. I'm able to inspire people. Then you're probably beginning to be in the category of someone who's a leader.
Uh, how is what you learned from your work help your marriage? How is your marriage?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. Shelley and I, in 5 days or so, will be married for 41 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and so I'm pretty impressed by something I listened to that Dr. Dan Allender said the other day. He has spent his life working on trauma, and he's just this incredible psychologist up in Seattle who I'm just very impressed with. And he says marriage is sometimes like hell, and sometimes it's like heaven. and both are true. I think the people who say, my wife and I, my husband and I have never said a harsh word to each other are lying. And or else they're suppressing their anger. Our feelings of being hurt, our feelings of being belittled, our feelings of being stomped on are all real. And so we have to acknowledge that sometimes we hurt people, as Rick Warren likes to say, right? Hurt people hurt people. And so our marriage for Shelley and I has been a series of really amazing highs and some pretty rough lows where, let's see, 3 years into our marriage, we had the two fancy cars and the apartment on the 17th floor of a beautiful skyscraper condo in Toronto. I was on the deacon board. Shelley was working for Hospital for Sick Children. Everybody at church thought that our marriage was perfect, but inside it was a complete unadulterated mess. She felt unheard. I felt unheard. And we had to do some serious work over the next few years to say, how do we honor and love and value each other? How do we ascribe dignity and worth to each other? How do we put the other person first? How do we suppress our own needs? I love what Mike Mason says. He's a 25-year award-winning book author, and his book is The Mystery of Marriage. And he says in the book, I finally, and all your listeners are going to write you and they're going to write me and they're going to be all upset about this. But here's what Mike says. He says, I finally decided that every argument that I have with my wife is my fault.
That's
Right. And if I had have done those things to put the other person first, if I think of 1 Corinthians 13, if I had have been more patient, if I did not take into account being wronged, if I saw the other person as more important than myself, then I wouldn't be offended. Uh, every time I get offended, it's my pride that's causing a problem. So if I can get rid of the pride, I can put the other person first, I cannot be so offended, then maybe I can not be the one to blame for the conflict.
now how is also your leadership impacted having your children? You have 5 kids. You're a busy man. You're traveling. You're all. How did you manage to raise a kid? I mean, you have wonderful children. How did you manage to raise them now?
Well, so everything didn't go perfectly. There's times when it went horribly, but we planned to get it right as much as we could, and to be kind of professional forgivers. We we said that if Dad does something he shouldn't, that it's ice cream for everybody, and that was the early days. And then the stakes were raised. If Dad does something he shouldn't, it's dinner out for everybody. And then there was next thing was vacations to Hawaii for everybody. No, just kidding. But I think being intentional about parenting is important. And so I dated each of our kids once a week. We went to McDonald's for a whatever, ice cream or an egg McMuffin or something. So there we would be at 6:30 in the morning before I dropped them off for school on Tuesday with one of the kids, on Wednesday with another kid, on Thursday with another kid. And did we miss it? Yeah, sometimes. I realized for my daughter Shannon, who's my oldest, that 2 years before she graduated from high school, somehow it just hit me one day. We're 104 weeks away from her graduating from high school and being out of the house. So we created a program called 104, 104 weeks, 104 H2H Connect, Heart to Heart Connect. And for 104 weeks, we met on Sunday morning at a little coffee shop and tried to connect before she was off to college.
That is
So I think it's about
amazing.
intentionality.
That is amazing. That's a great idea for fathers to do that. That is wonderful. Now, with the way you're so strategic, were you like, this is the way it is, this is how kids this is how you're gonna be, this is what you're gonna do, this is the trajectory of your life gonna be, or not?
Well, we had a family mission statement that we created that basically said our family is going through life together to, make a difference in the culture and have roots in Christ and wings for our mission. And so we had this house with all these character traits built into the walls of the house and the windows and all that. We had it on our refrigerator and at the stairs. So more intentionality, but we didn't always get it right. And one of my kids I was too harsh with because I was too upset with how things were not going well with my business. And I needed to do some serious apologies to him and say, I'm sorry for really being angry at you when you were um, difficult to deal with at times, right? No kid being difficult to deal with or being just a kid is any cause for a parent to be angry. And if you're going to be angry, you need to take a deep breath and leave the room. And there were some times I didn't do that, and so yeah,
What is your biggest weakness, Greg?
I think trying to do too much.
Trying to do too much.
Yeah.
Eh, okay, so what do you say to a leader who is going? You know what? I think with this COVID, should I close my business? Should I keep it open? What's gonna happen? And he comes to you and say, "Help me, give me some advice." What do you say to that?
Yeah, well, I would say to the man or the woman who came and said, "What should I do?" It's a group think moment. That's why Convene exists, to say if you have, let's say 10 leaders around a table to whom you ask that question, and each of those leaders, let's say, is in business for 30 years, you have 300 years of experience answering that question, which is way better than me answering that question. And a good coach would never answer the question anyway. They would put the question back to you and say, well, Nazareth, what was your original plan when you first moved to the US and you wanted to start this business? And how's that going for you? And what does your spouse say? And what do your kids say? And how can you make the most significant difference for Christ in your lifetime? And do you think it's in alignment with your skills and talents and abilities and your spiritual gifts? And what do your friends say? And what do you think you should do now? So it's never dish out a bunch of answers. A coach approach would say, I'm going to inquire to you. And to quote my friend Chris McCluskey, Dr. Chris McCluskey, who's had a psychological practice and has trained over 4,000 Christian coaches, he would say, when your own ears hear words coming out of your own mouth, and those are going into your own brain, that's a very significant moment, right? So let's say you said to me, Greg, what's your biggest weakness? And I said, like I did a minute ago, trying to do too much. And you said, what does it look like to do too much? And I said, oh, sometimes to get home late, past dinner. And then what if you said to me, and what does that feel like? And I said, oh, it doesn't feel good. And you said, say more. And then you said, say more. And then you said, say more. That's good coaching. That's very different than if you said, hey, Greg, what's your greatest weakness? And I said, oh, sometimes I try to do too much. And you said, oh, me too.
I,
You see the difference?
yes, big difference. Yes. Uh, uh, let's see. I'm gonna ask you something about leaders, and you're a great leader. Leaders are sometimes like type A personality. They are they kind of keep things to themselves. They don't open up. They don't. Was that you? Were you that kind of person, or were you, as a believer, more open and more, you know?
I think there's a little bit of both in me. But that's the peer group notion. Ecclesiastes 4:12, right, says a triple braided cord can't be broken, which is implying that you need to be in community with other people. And coaching, 2 Timothy 2:2, these things I've taught you, teach them the faithful men who will teach others. This all speaks of community, and it doesn't speak to holding things within. It's Proverbs or Psalms that says, "When I kept silent, my bones wasted away." So Scripture is very clear that holding things in is a pride thing because you think I can do this myself.
What is the worst trip you've had where everything went wrong or it's funny? We have to think funny here for 2 minutes.
Worst trip?
Worst or funniest thing that happened to you while traveling?
Well, I would say, one of my favorite movies to watch sometimes is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, where they're stuck in the snowstorm and walk up to the rental car counter and say things we can't say on your podcast. But I would probably say that India trip where I was sicker than a dog on the train, and the train was moving and I was in the little bathroom, and let's just say it didn't go very well. We arrived at the train station late at night. It didn't go very well again. And there I was on the train tracks feeling much better than I did a couple of minutes earlier. And that's when I went to the hotel room. And the last thing I remember is Mike Constance, pastor at Saddleback, handing me this little pill and saying, "Take this, you'll feel fine." And so, yeah, that was probably my worst trip, and I was probably the most sick, but everybody was taking good care of me.
That's wonderful. Now, uh, have you ever met a leader that you said, I'm not going to work with you. I don't like working with you. I don't want to deal with you?
I don't like working with arrogant people who don't listen,
Mm,
because they think they have all the answers, and no matter what you say, they just don't listen. And I'm also not interested in helping people to create a company that does not have a goal of honoring God and advancing the kingdom.
that's honorable. I appreciate that. What do you call it? What makes a better leader? Let's say if someone is young right now listening, he wants to be a CEO one day. What do you advise someone young who's I want to be a leader? What do you tell them?
Well, the first thing you want to do is do an assessment of who you are as a person. So at Convene, we use Wiley tools, not like Wiley the coyote, but Wiley the company.
Uh-huh.
And so Wiley PXT is a tool we use, but it doesn't matter if you use Strength Finder or DISC
Mm.
or Berkman or Myers Briggs. Do something to evaluate yourself and say, who am I? You can't be a leader if your personality makeup is that you are an individual performer who doesn't have any strategic, any visionary, any maximizer, any getting things done kind of genes in you. So you don't want to aspire to be something you're not. An example would be in reverse, I wouldn't want to aspire to be an artist because I can't paint and I can't draw. My son Jason can paint and draw, but I can't. And so it would be wrong for me to say I wanted to aspire to be an artist because you or anyone would look at my art. And unless you really loved me and lied to me, you wouldn't be able to say it's any good. So you have to be having and possessing spiritual gifting and individual skills that would clearly set you in the direction of being a leader. That's step number one. Step number two, I'd say start reading. Read all the things you can about leadership. Maybe if you're a young student, you should be in a business degree track, not an
Uh,
English major track or something. If you think you're going to be now, if you're going to be a writer, want to be a writer, maybe you should be an English major or communications major. If you're going to be a communicator, but if you're just going to be somebody who's in business, you need to know this is how to read an income statement. This is how to read a balance sheet. This is what EBITDA is. This is what net profit is. This is what net equity is. You need to know all that, or you're not going to have the tools of the trade. It'd be like a comedian who can't tell a joke, right? He
right.
get he gets things thrown at him from the audience, and pretty soon he's off the stage.
Other than the Bible and Proverbs, what's your favorite book on leadership that you recommend for people to read?
My favorites are on my website at gregleith.com, but I love One Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard.
Yeah.
I love anything by Max Dupree. Uh, Leadership Jazz is maybe one of my favorite books of all time. I love a little booklet that's out of print that you can get for free now called The Go Getter, which talks about how to get things done. I'm a raving fan of anything Dallas Willard,
Mhm.
and but that's in the spiritual zone. So yeah, there's a few.
How many books a month do you read?
I've always got about 5 on the go, and I don't actually ever read a book from cover to cover, except very few.
Hmm.
I look at the table of contents. I see the chapters I want to read, and I read those chapters. Or I read an executive book summary. Members in Convene get free executive book summaries from us every few weeks, and they save whatever it takes you to read a book. Let's say 6 hours. You can read this executive book summary in 15 minutes.
This is interesting because I always feel guilty when I don't finish a whole book. I go, I gotta finish it to feel good that I finished it. But what you're saying is interesting. It's like you just look, okay, I need to know about this chapter, that chapter, and that's good enough. Now, are you auditory or are you visual? You need to read the book or you can listen to it.
I There's the big secret. We're going to let it out here on Facebook Live on Comedian Nazareth show.
Uh-huh.
I don't listen to audiobooks.
You don't listen. You
No,
read them.
I
Are you
like
a speed reader?
I like to here's a book I'm reading right now. Look, all underlined. I love underlining, and I've got
Ah.
my colored pens at the beck and call, and I love to read something, underline it, circle it, highlight it, think about it, and that's how it sticks for me.
I know a lot of leaders, and I know some personally who are like into Ziegler and motivation and stuff, and then they are not dealing with problems in their life, in their everything. They think positive, like, oh yeah, if I only think positive, all these problems will fix itself. What is your thought on that as a Christian leader?
Well, if you listen to my much smarter than me psychology friends, John Townsend, Henry Cloud, Chris McCluskey, they would all say that's not real life, right? It's not real to say you don't have any feelings. So was I sad when my mom died? You better believe it. Was I sad when my father died? Yes. Was I sad when my wife and I were having marriage problems in 1983? Yes. To say, oh, buck up, it'll be better, that would be not even Jesus was that, or the Bible wouldn't say that Jesus wept.
Mm.
Jesus was sad when he got to the tomb of Lazarus. He was not so happy when the disciples were arguing. He was frustrated with the Mary Martha thing when he said, "Why are you not listening to me? And instead you're doing the dishes." And so Jesus had real emotions. Jesus had real feelings, and to ignore them would be ignoring the fact that we are human.
You travel a lot, right?
I do,
How
unfortunately.
how do you keep yourself pure? How do you keep yourself from the temptations? You see great leaders who are much better than us spiritually falling. How do
Yeah,
you?
well, I think that um, I think it was Stephen Covey who said, "When there's a deeper burning yes within, it's easier to say no." And I think it's if we're talking about men, it's not the easiest thing in the world to um, deal with visual temptation. If we're talking about women, fill in the blank of whatever a lady would say is her highest temptation moment. Um, So I like the idea of filling your mind with good and true and beautiful things
Mhm.
so that the things that are aberrant are not as easy to take residence in your mind.
Philippians 4, whatever true, pure, noble, meditate on these things. That's but what is that? What about the leaders? There's a lot of leaders that are struggling with that. And you know,
Yeah.
especially pastors. You hear pastors and you hear this whole pornography, like 70% or something like that. I just, to me, I don't believe it, but a statistic is saying it. What do
Yeah.
you advise?
Um, Again, I'm pretty much a guy who wants to sort of go, not sort of, wants to go to the experts. And my friend Jay Stringer has written very, very, very significant work on this, where he's talked about sexual temptation, and he talks about it in a way that's very powerful. That it's not always right to say, "Don't get in a car with a woman, don't have dinner with a woman, copy all your emails to a woman, to your wife." Oh my gosh, that's just not how I do life. And is there certain women at certain times that I don't want to be alone with? Absolutely. But do I say I never will get in a car with a woman? That's just not something that is a thing
Mm,
for me. It might be for some other people. But I would rather say that I need to get my mindset straight about the fact that women, just like men, are created in the image of God, somebody to be honored and valued, to be ascribing dignity and value and worth to, so that I have such awe and respect for Mrs. Whomever, Miss Whomever, that I would never even entertain the thought of doing anything inappropriate sexually with somebody of the opposite sex. Now, does that mean I'm just Mr. Ironclad Superman? No. So what I'll do is, if I'm attracted to somebody of the opposite sex, I'll say to my wife, "I'm attracted to so and so, and I want you to keep making sure that if you see her on my calendar, that I'm going to talk to you about it." So we're just very open and honest about it.
that's wonderful. That's
I
wonderful.
mean,
Now,
it would be ridiculous, would it not, for me to say, once I got married, I'm never attracted to anybody again. That's not how life works. So I think to be disingenuous about it and say, uh, "Oh, I'm not. No, no, I'm good." That's just not real. So I just say to Shelly, my wife, "I'm going to have to be careful with whomever."
wouldn't you say, well, don't deal with that person anymore, ever?
We put boundaries around it, so I wouldn't have coffee with that person alone. Whereas other women that work with me, I would have coffee alone, right? So
Yeah. Now, you were I remember one time you wanted to hire me when you were at Biola to do you were in fundraising, and there's people watching and listening right now. They're in nonprofit, it's either like a crisis pregnancy or other nonprofits or children. What advice do you give them to raise capital fund or sponsorship or something? What is some from your wisdom in all these years? What do you advise?
well, again, I go to the experts. So there's a gentleman, I don't even think he's a Christian. His name is Gerald Panis, and he wrote a book called Asking. And so he talks about how to ask for money. There's that. At Biola University, we had 10 principles for people raising funds, and I would look those up. Biola University, oh, I can't remember what we called them anymore, but they were um, what we as a university felt were important principles for fundraising. An example was, um, it's the Holy Spirit's job to convict the giver whether they want to be involved with giving to the institution. So the pressure's off of me to get you to say yes, but the pressure's certainly on me to ask. And so we need to be asking, but there shouldn't be pressure to get to yes every time, or that's manipulative. I would look at the Generous Giving website, generousgiving.org, where you can find all kinds of tips on fundraising. And the Christian Management Association is now called Christian Leadership Alliance. You've probably done some of their conferences, and they have extensive conference once a year with many, many tracks of learning about how to raise funds.
I'm writing all this. This is good. This is gold. Now, how can you, let's say someone is watching and said, I'm single, I'm not married, I don't have kids, I don't have a business, I'm not a leader, this is not helping me. How can they glorify God in their regular daily life?
Yeah, that's a great question because we have this mostly wrong in our culture, and I'm as guilty as the next. When it was back in, let's see, 1988 or so, I was a deacon at our church in Vancouver, Canada, and I would go up and lay hands on the missionaries. As you remember, we used to do that in church where we'd bless the missionaries on Sunday night, back when there even was church on Sunday night. And I remember hurrying out of the church before it was over to get to the airport to fly to some city to do work that we had to be on deck for a Monday morning meeting. And I would always be taking off, looking out into the sky, 30,000 feet, looking at the city lights below. And I was thinking, maybe, just maybe, when I get this all figured out, I too will be in missions, because I sure am not now. That thinking is not biblical. It's dead wrong. And it would mean that all the work you do to make people laugh is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is for you to make money by being a comedian so you can give it to somebody to dig water wells in Africa. And that is dead wrong. The Bible says everything we do can be done to the glory of God. And the Greek translation of everything, as you know, is everything. And so all things can be done to the glory of God. That means, to quote Dorothy Sayers, a British author and philosopher, she would say, the church for so long has been telling everybody not to be drunk on Sunday that they forgot to tell them how to make great tables. So, the person who made this mug glorified God if they wanted to while they made it. The person who figured out how to do an arthroscopic heart procedure, if you need that, you're pretty glad that God gave them that gift. The person who raises cattle so we can eat steak, or vegetables so we can eat vegetables, those people are really important. And Lester DeCoster is an author that wrote one time a very extensive little article that basically says, imagine if the factories stopped working. Imagine if the buses stopped rolling. Imagine if the factories shut down. Imagine if the people stopped cleaning. Imagine if the electricity stopped working. Pretty soon there'd be nothing happening. The cities would be a mess. We'd be hunkered down in caves around fires, and society would cease to exist. So it's a false premise of Satan to say that the work of being a comedian doesn't matter. You, being a comedian, honor God by telling great jokes and making people laugh. That's a gift and a talent that you have that not everybody has. And when you do it, you glorify God. You don't need to send 10 cents of your money to missions to glorify God more. You glorify God, period, by doing the work that you do.
Even if you're not a believer. Is
Even
that
if you're
what
not
you're
a
saying?
believer, the trees cry out, right? The mountains and the hills cry out and say, yes, they are honoring and worshiping God.
Where do you see Greg Leith in 5 years?
I don't know.
I'm
Uh,
coaching you right now.
I'm a big fan of gosh, I'm forgetting his book now on God's will, the Canadian pastor. But anyway, he says, which is a Bible verse, find out what God is doing and get on board. And I'm a big fan of saying, where is God working, and how can I come alongside what he's already doing rather than start something new? It's too hard to start something new all the time. Pretty much everything that needs to be invented organizationally is kind of in place right now. So I don't think we need another crisis pregnancy center. I don't think we need another house building in Mexico organization. I don't think we need another, share the gospel in India. All these organizations exist. So find out what God is doing and get on board. Now, I'm not saying we don't need new technology. We don't need new apps. We don't need new ways of banking. That's all great. But pretty much, I think that a lot of mission organizations that get invented because mom and pop had an idea didn't really need to begin.
You know what? That is so true, and not many people talk about this. We have an organization that I started in 2009, co-founded, called Voice of the Refugees, and we've been helping thousands of Iraqi, Syrian, Egyptian, Afghani families learn English. We've gave over $400,000 worth of food in the last since the pandemic started, just delivering, and we're doing all that. And then you see other organizations like starting out like we want to come to Anaheim where we are, and they're starting their own refugee organization. It's like, and we go, wait a minute, come, we'll help you. Come sit with us. We'll teach you. We'll help you go, and that's where you're right. We don't need another new one. There's always, there's all these organizations already there and set up. So that's the great point. Now, what do you tell a pastor right now who's going, what do I do next now that the pandemic is kind of dying off, now that life is going to open up again with this, there's a new mentality for leaders, there's a new what did leaders should learn from COVID, as first as a pastor and second as a business leader?
Well, here's what I say to pastors. Um, in 10 years of asking this question to CEOs of for-profit businesses, I've only had one person out of hundreds answer this question with a yes. Here's the question. Has your pastor ever come to your place of business to visit you? So my advice to pastors is get out of your office and get out in the community and walk the parish. That thought, walk the parish, comes from my friend Matt Canless, who is a pastor up in Wenatchee, Washington.
Yes, I
And
heard them at your convene. You're right when I
yeah,
was speaking.
my son Carson is a parish priest with him, and he got that from when he was in Scotland at a little parish in Methlick, Scotland, at the end of the road. There's A roads, B roads, and C roads in Scotland, and he was like at the end of the C roads, so it was at the end of nowhere, and he walked the parish. That can work in America today. So I say to pastors listening, call all your people in business and say, hi, I'm Pastor Jones. I wanted to see when in the next 30 days would be good for me to come have coffee, tour your shop, and pray for you.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. What do you say? What is different now with the pandemic? That what we as leaders should learn, or when we are planning, we're putting our goals. I know a lot of goals were shut off because of the COVID. What is different? What should we do different?
I think we need to re-embrace each other that we have not been able to do. I was at a meeting this morning in Orange County, and I said to some people as we are meeting, are you okay to shake hands? And they got up and said, shake hands. I'm ready to hug again. And it's true that God made us for community. God made us to need each other. He didn't make us to do life alone. And so part of that is being in the same room with each other in real time. And, it's great to talk to you right now. And I feel like we're having a conversation in my living room or your living room. That's really great. But when I see you, there's something in me that needs to hug you and embrace you and say, hey, I have missed seeing you. This is a great moment because we need connection.
Same here, and I've seen you at Convene many times. You've had me perform and speak, and you're a hugger too. I love to hug people, and I miss that. And I've seen. I was at an event last week in Kingman, Arizona, where they have those three bracelets. And it says, "Hey, if you don't want to touch, if you're very careful, wear the third one." If the green one would say, "Hey, I'm okay to fist bump. I'm okay to say hello, shake hands." And the yellow ones means give me a hug. So it was neat to see how each you look at each person's bracelet and decide from that, well, are you a hugger? Are you okay to hug me or shake my hand or just keep my distance? It's
Yeah,
just an interesting point. But what are you working on right now? Are you writing a book? Have you written books?
I haven't decided to write a book. Going back to the same thing we talked about a little bit ago, which was in my field of faith in the marketplace, there's probably 150 books out there. I'm not sure there needs to be another one, but we are toying with the idea of doing a 52-week devotional of faith in the marketplace stories and faith in the marketplace people stories. So it'd be, 26 devotionals and 26 stories of people who are making a difference in the culture as business leaders.
Last few questions. I know this is hours that's gone fast. What do you tell someone who's working right now, but they hate their job because of COVID, this is the only job they can have right now? What do you say to them?
Yeah, I would say you want to see yourself as the little bit player that you are, including me, including you, in God's larger story. Before Larry Crabb died a couple weeks ago, Dr. Larry Crabb, he wrote a book
Oh,
about,
he died. I worked with him last
yeah,
year.
unfortunately, he passed away.
Mm.
He wrote a book called 66 Love Letters, which is the thread of God's love through Genesis to Revelation. And in it, he basically says, and here's why I think this is absolutely fascinating. He was the head of the Christian Psychologists Association. That's a big deal. And he said these words. He said, I don't think I've really ever cured anyone.
Mm.
What? That's a huge statement. But he said, here's what I think is important. Not reading the Bible to figure out what all the Greek means and not reading the Bible to figure out what all the theology depth is. How about we read the Bible to figure out, where does God keep saying he loves us in every book of the Bible? And once we figure out that he loves us and that the larger story is his glory, then we become bit players in the larger story of his glory. So that means when I'm sick with prostate cancer, when I'm sick with breast cancer, when I hate my job, when my wife and I are having an argument, when my kids stormed out the door, when I had a car accident, when I got sick, I don't see it as such a horrible thing. I don't see my kids' graduation as the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. You see them as um, not high spikes and low spikes on the graph of your life. You see it as I'm a player on the stage of God's larger story. So the person who says, I hate my job, I wouldn't do anything rash like quit tomorrow. I'd keep working it and say, how can I be part of God's larger story while I'm looking for a new place, while I'm assessing who I am, while I'm asking my friends what they see as my strengths, while I'm figuring out what my spiritual gifts are, where I'm putting out 25 resumes a day and calling people to find a new job. And then finally, I find a new place.
Uh, you have how many boys and how many daughters?
I have two daughters, the oldest and the youngest, and three boys in the middle.
And what do you tell your daughters what kind of husband to look for?
Somebody a little different than me. Well, I think the first thing you want is, well, my oldest daughter got married. Chris, if you're listening, we're happy that you went to Pepperdine, got a finance degree, and have a job and love Jesus. So that's my criteria right there. Um, but no, we want somebody who is aligned theologically. And so we agree about who is God. We agree about what is the Bible. We agree about church attendance. So we agree on the biggest point, which is our theology. And then I think it's somebody you want to be with, you like being with, you're friends with, you enjoy as a friend. Henry Cloud has been writing in the last few weeks about, why don't we date people who we see as somebody we want to be friends with, instead of how fast we can kiss and say, oh boy, I saw her across the room and my heart went boom. Well, that happens to everybody, right? That you are attracted to, but that doesn't mean you're aligned theologically, that you have, I think, a similar financial, economic history, where you have a similar family history. I think you should understand their family history, their personal history. But the most important thing is, do they love God?
Good. Now, you're 106 years old. You're ready to go. You want to be with the Lord, and you're given a recorder, and you said you have 2 minutes to sum up the best wisdom you got in your life. You have
Wow.
2 minutes.
Oh my gosh, Nazareth, you asked these questions. 106 years old, I would say. Um, Listen, it really all comes down to love God and love people. I love what happened in John chapter 17 because that is the end of life for Jesus in the next few days, right? He's going to be betrayed, he's going to go to the cross. It's going to be a horrible series of days. And the night before, he's praying in the garden. And what does he pray in the prayer to his Father God? He says, "You gave me these people, the disciples, even though they're sleeping right now. You gave them to me. I showed them you. I showed them God, and I give them back to you, and I'm out of here." So I think that's my best advice is love God yourself, show him to other people, and see you in heaven.
Wow, this is deep. Now, how can people? Are you doing speaking engagements? Are you open to doing speaking
I'm open
engagements?
to it. Yeah. I don't do a lot anymore, but yes.
How can people get a hold of you and enjoy your wonderful blogs as well? Where can they
Well, the
go?
things I write are on the Convene website, convenenow.com. And the things I write are simultaneously on gregleith.com. That's GregLeith, gregleith.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time. Can you pinky promise? I want to have a coffee an hour with you. Can we do that?
Okay.
All right, here we go. Here we go. You got it.
Good.
Good. So thank you so much, Greg. I really appreciate the time with you, and you've been so helpful to our listeners. I'm gonna go back and look at the questions and comments, and if you want to share it, you can go to Comedian Nazareth on Facebook and share it. But I want to remind you, audience, every night, every weeknight at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time, we have our live with Naz. Tonight will be show number 250. We've been with you guys for 250 days in this quarantine time, just to encourage you, lift you up, make you laugh, and also pray for you. So join us tonight on this page, Comedian Nazareth on Facebook, and we'll see you. And if you're a business leader, a Christian business leader, I want to challenge you to look into Convene, Convene now.com, and check what they're doing. You need to be in a group like that that will encourage you. Thank you again. Thank you, Greg, for being with us. I love you guys, and we'll see you later.
My
Goodbye.
pleasure.